Good evening, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. It's Grandpop. I'm coming to you from the living room in Jack's Beach. And tonight I want to talk to you about something very important. Now, Frank, this is something that might pertain to you right now. Although I kind of hope that it doesn't, unless things have changed a lot. But Olive and Arlo, this video is something that you don't need to even watch until you're adults. So hopefully your parents screen these for you and you don't just get to go in willy-nilly. But if you do, it's like if you're 12, 15 years old and I'm gone and it's like, yeah, let's hear what he had to say about this topic. Just don't. And the title of the topic is Parenting Tips. Two things before I get started. And number one is a caveat that nothing in this video has anything to do with your parents. And that's one reason why I don't want you to watch it until you're at a point in your life that you're thinking about having kids and you're thinking about how to raise kids. I don't want you to go to your parents and go, oh, well, Grandpa said you're doing this wrong, because they're going through parenting right now. Parenting is very, very hard. It's probably the hardest job in the world. And I'll get into some of the reasons why. So it's not about them. And the other thing is, full disclosure, this is not a video of me saying, well, when I was a young man, I knew how to raise children. And I was a great parent, and I knew everything about being a parent. Now, back then I thought I knew a lot about being a parent. Maybe not everything, but I thought I had it all figured out. And that's what people do. They work real hard at being parents, so they think they know a lot about it. But we'll look at that. This is stuff that I picked up, some of it back when I was raising children, and then some of it that I learned that, oh, I was messing this up. And if you're, well, Arlo and Olive, I helped raise both your children. My son Tom from birth, Courtney from the time that I met her when she was 11 years old. I was her dad, and I'll always be her dad. So, but it's not like I really knew a lot. In fact, I did something, and so I'll start off with this. One of the last things that I said to my dad had to do with my son, Frank. So we're talking about your dad, Frankie. And Frank had just done some pretty outrageous things. He was at the house in Stone Harbor. My mom had passed away. My dad was pretty ill. And I always thought, well, I'm the real parent. I'm the one who's putting the hammer down and making these guys behave and blah, blah, blah. And my dad was in the background being the nice guy. We were good cop, bad cop, and he was always the good cop. And you need stuff like that in life. Frank and Tom needed Grandpop in their life back then. But to me, he was an impediment to me getting, especially my son Frank, who had gotten into a fight with the police, and they had restrained him. They had him in this hallway on a gurney getting ready to go into some kind of an evaluation over at Burdett Tomlin Hospital and all this stuff. And while that was going on, my dad got sick, And he was in the hospital, and he said, "How's Frankie doing?" And I said, "He's not doing good." And Frank, you were an infant when this happened. And my dad said, "Well, at least we tried." And what he was saying to me was, both of us put effort into this, and my effort's done. I'm getting ready to go. He knew that he didn't have a long time left to be involved in Frank's life. And I actually got upset. I didn't yell at him or anything like that, but I like snapped at him, and I went, "Well, I know that I did, but you covered for him all the time." And I could see that broke his heart. And I'm ashamed of that. Part of being a good dad is to be a good son, be a good daughter. So always remember that. Frank, you need to be respectful to Matt and Jen. They're your parents. Even though my son Frank was your real father, that's your dad. And Olive and Arlo, you also. Respect your parents, because it's in the Ten Commandments. Honor your mother and father. So, as you can tell, I wasn't always the best parent. I did come up with a couple good ideas while I was a parent. And this had to do with when the three of us, me and Frank and Tom, went to live with the four Mathers. So that was the mother, Judy, my girlfriend, and Alex, Becca, and Jim, her children. So it was a big family, and I moved there a few days before the boys did. At least a few days before the boys did. And then they got there in time to go to school for the new school year. And I had 3 rules. We're one family, no adult shopping, and the 0 to 21 rule. We're one family was your brothers and sister, 4 brothers and 1 sister. I'm one dad. Judy's one mom of this family unit. Now, Frank and Tom had a mom. It's your grandmother, Arlo and Frank. Your grandmother, Marcia, I guess her name's still Clark, my last name, but that was a married name. And the Mathers had their dad, and they went to see their dad, and my sons went to see their mom and their whole family. Their whole family was involved in raising them as much as my family was. And I was sort of like the CEO of raising Frank and Tom. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but so I'm the dad of this family. There's no I'm going to go tell my dad on you or anything like that. I'm going to tell my mom on you. And for the most part, that didn't happen. I mean, Becca every once in a while would say, "Yeah, my dad could beat you up," and but Becca turned out all right. The second one was no adult shopping. What adult shopping was going up to your parent and asking them if you were okay doing something, if you were allowed to do something, and passing the other parent. So if Frank or Tom walked past Judy and came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, can we go out and play?" I would say, "Why did you walk past Judy to say that? You need to ask her." And she might have said no. I was usually the one that was saying no, and Judy was a pretty good mom to those guys, to all 5 of them. So I was probably a mediocre dad. I was kind of a tyrant. So you couldn't adult shop. You couldn't, like, and especially like if you asked one person if you could do something, and they said no, you couldn't go to somebody else and ask them. If you thought you were going to get a better deal, like, no. And then the 0 to 21 rule. And that rule was, when you're born, when you're 0 years old, you have no control of anything. If you're left there alone, you're going to die because you can't do anything on your own. And when you're 21, you can vote, you already could go into the military. I could have done this as a 0 to 18 rule, but it was 21 because I based it on, hey, you're able to vote, you're a full citizen of the United States with voting rights. So that was why I did that. By the time you're 21, you should be able to do 100% of everything on your own. So when you're 3 years old, you can only do 3/21, whatever, 3/21s, which is 1/7 of what an adult can do. Now, it's not linear by any means. It's kind of a I don't know the word to use. It's not a perfect line of 0 to 21, and you should be right along here. It was generalized that by the time you're 10 years old, you should be almost halfway responsible for your own life. And by that, it doesn't mean that we're going to let you make almost half the decisions in your own life, but you should be able to make those decisions. And sometimes we would allow the 5 kids to make those decisions. So that was the 3 things that I was kind of proud of. And at my son Frank's memorial service, and Frankie, you were there. Olive and Arlo, you weren't born yet. But I said to Becca, "Yeah, do you still hate me?" And she said, "You know what, I had my problems with you, but I don't hate you, and I never really hated you. I got to do a lot of great things. We got to go to Stone Harbor, and Nana and Grandpa, my parents, the people that she called Nana and Grandpa, were very good to the Mather children." And so she said, "And some of the stuff that you did as a parent, like I use that as a parent today." And I've never had any of the other kids say that to me. And remember, Arlo, if you sneak and watch this before you're old enough to have kids yourself, it's not talking about your dad, but none of the other 4 ever went like, "Oh, that was great." But she mentioned it. Like, yeah, she said, "Did you read about that adult shopping, or did you invent that yourself?" And I said, "Well, I think I invented it, but I probably stole it." Because most ideas are, they happen throughout the universe, kind of. Here's 4 observations about raising kids. And no matter how much prep and thinking and, you know, reading, even talking to other people. And you should do all those things. But no matter how much you do to prepare to raise children, you know a lot less about it than you think you do. I thought I knew everything, almost everything. Like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm putting a lot of effort into this. I was full of crap. I didn't know what was going on. I was winging it every day. And you'll be winging it too. But hey, welcome to the human race. There have been billions of people born on this planet. And all of them either were very, very diligent parents, or some just didn't put any effort into it, some just left, abandoned their family. There's all kinds of parents that have been born and lived on this planet and died off. But none of them were perfect. None of them raised the perfect child. I mean, who knows why, like, Hitler became Hitler. Everybody uses Hitler as the gold standard of evil. And he is the gold standard of evil. But I've studied some things about World War II, and because of that, I've studied some things about Hitler. Like, his mom loved him, and she had a lot of hope for his future. She called him Wolfie. Who calls their kid Wolf? Well, maybe Wolf Blitzer's mother called him Wolf. Wolfie. And when he first came into power, there were all these like ladies fawning over him, bringing him fruit baskets and singing songs to him and all this kind of stuff. But he became the most horrible type of tyrant. And there have been a bunch of people like that. Mao Zedong, Joseph Stalin, just so many people who just have killed millions of innocent human beings. And they all had mothers, probably, who loved them. I've never seen a psychological study done that said, well, these horrible dictators all had bad parents. I've never seen that. Could it be true? I guess it could be true. I didn't know their parents. I didn't really study their parents, but I'm sure that Mao Zedong's mother loved him, had a lot of hope for his future. And one reason that people think they know more about raising kids than they do is they think that kids are a tabula rasa. So let me break that down a little bit. There's a book, and there's tons of books. Like, my mom read the books by Dr. Spock. Not Mr. Spock, not that guy. That guy. Am I doing it right? But Dr. Spock, who wrote baby books. She read them. I didn't do a lot of book reading about raising kids, but I put a lot of thought into it. And I assumed that my sons, and then eventually Sam, and then the Mathers, and then Courtney, that they started as blank slates. When they were little babies, you could write on them, and that became who they are. So there's this debate that goes on. Is it nature or nurture? Are you born, you know, with a full personality and all that kind of stuff, or are you born with nothing, and the world writes on there what you become? And this book by Steven Pinker, he makes 3 points, and one of them is BS. I don't agree with it. That's the last point, and we'll get to that. But the first 2 points are excellent, and this is a book that I would suggest you read before your first baby's born, so you can figure out, like, well, okay, what am I up against? You still won't know what you're up against, but you'll have a little better idea. And the 3 premises, I think, of the blank slate, or the tabula rasa, that you are a blank slate. That's Latin for blank slate. That you're, a chalkboard with completely erased, and people start writing on it, and that's who you become. But at birth, you have a well-developed personality. And a lot of really, really brilliant people didn't think that. John Locke, he called it the white paper. You're a white paper. But then you have people like Plato, and to Plato, he said that you already existed before you were born. Your personality already existed. And the second is the noble savage, and that's that we are born pure and subsequently corrupted by society. And that's not true, and that's what Pinker says. So he said that we have a personality when we're born, and people just have to deal with that. And I forgot to mention this, but when we first brought my son Frank home from the hospital, my wife wanted to go up and take a nap, or she had to go do something someplace. So we had the baby, and by we, it was me and my grandmother, who at the time was probably 90 years old. And she was this little tiny lady. And Frank just kept crying. I checked, and he hadn't soiled his diaper or anything like that, and didn't want his bottle, and didn't want to be burped. And I said, I don't know. I'm sitting there complaining, and Grandma said, well, he's having a bad day, Frankie. I said, have you lost your mind, Grandma? He's like a couple days old. How can he be having a bad day? And she said, well, he's just a little human being, just like us. But he's just little. He can have a bad day just like you can have a bad day. And I'm sure I said, you're full of crap, Grandma. She was right. And Steven Pinker proves it. So the noble savage, we're born pure little souls, and then, the world starts teaching us how to be corrupt. But in Christianity, you're born a sinner. And you have to learn that you're a sinner and that you have to do something about it. Now, this isn't a video trying to get you to convert to Christianity. I'm using it as an example. Like, if you put some cookies in a jar, and kids standing there, a little kid, Arlo, your age, and put those cookies up on the jar and go, Arlo, you can have a cookie after dinner, and then walk out of the room. Nobody has to teach you, Arlo, that I can reach those cookies. Maybe nobody will know I really would like a cookie right now. And you're 4 right now. You can get on countertops very easily. You can reach most of them, or you can get a chair and stand on the higher ones. You can get it. You can get that cookie. Nobody has to teach you to do wrong. You may do it, you may not. But if you're a normal kid, you're probably going to go up and get one of those cookies. If you know your mom's not coming back, oh, I'm going to get in the shower. Like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. You'll have little bits of chocolate chip around your lips when she gets out of the shower. You have to be taught to follow the rules, to follow the laws, to be good to others. You know, you have to be taught to share your things with other children and stuff like that. So these are 2 things that if you realize, like, this person, this little baby I'm holding in my arms, has a personality, and they have a propensity to do things that are bad. And my responsibilities are to try to figure out that personality and how to work with the personality of this human being, just like my grandmother said. And that this child is going to want to do a lot of things that are wrong. And they're going to learn from me that they're wrong. That's things that you really have to deal with. Now, the last of the 3 things that Pinker talked about was the ghost in the machine. And that's that you have you have a soul, and you have to wrestle with this soul and everything. Well, he believes, or believed back then, I don't know what he believes now, that when you die, you turn to ashes. I don't believe that. I believe you have a soul. And part of this whole thing has to do with figuring that out. Figuring out the darker side of you in relation to your children, and your children in relation to the world. So, but there's a song from a guy named Meatloaf where he says, I want you and I need you, but there ain't no way I'm ever going to love you. But don't be sad, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad with this. Pinker was dead wrong about the ghost in the machine. But the blank slate and the noble savage, spot on. Now here's the second thing that I learned. That your kid ain't as smart as you think he or she is. It's your kid. You don't know what it's like to hold your children in your hand. They're little. And look at this little human being that has the whole world in front of them. And then watch them grow. Before you know it, you can't hold them in your hand. You know, before you know it, they're 1 like you just turned, Olive. They're 4.5 that you are, or they're 23, which you turned yesterday, Frank. And as you go through that whole thing, your life is totally invested in them. So you think that they're smarter than they are. You think they're cuter than they are. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But let me talk to you about they ain't as smart as you are. What you want to do is you want to challenge your children intellectually, artistically, and spiritually. I saw something by Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a psychologist. He's a clinician, but he also is a professor up at some college up in Toronto, Canada. Brilliant. And he said that you should put children in new situations where they have all this stimuli coming at them from new directions that they're not used to. And it's like when you go into the gym and you start doing exercises, you're building muscle. Well, when you put children in new situations, you're building neural connections, and that's very similar to building muscle. So, but the biggest thing is, and I think I kind of did this. I'm sure, and you can ask your parents. Well, you're probably going to ask them if you watched this earlier than you should have. And Frank, you can't ask your dad. But you want to teach your kids how to think, not what to think. You want to give them morals to learn. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, let them do anything they want. Like, you should act right to other people. You know, you shouldn't cheat other people. You shouldn't do mean things to other people in front of your children. You shouldn't do any of those things anyway, but you shouldn't do them in front of your children. You should set a good example, and you should teach them how to behave in different situations. You know, how to go to a restaurant and sit there and eat, and not be running all over the place, disrupting everything and making everybody there mad. But if you teach them what to think, and you will teach them some things to think. You know, if you're a Christian, you're going to say, oh, you should believe in Jesus. If you're a Muslim, you should believe in Muhammad. So I'm not saying not to do those things. You know, here's mathematics. I got these books for all the 5 kids, the Mathers and the Clarks. These workbooks for the grades that they were in. And they had a certain amount of time a day. This lasted maybe for a month or 2 that they did this, but a couple of them got better grades the next year because of it. There were math workbooks to do to improve your math skills. So you want to teach them that, but when it comes to things like, we're in a political season right now, there's a presidential election. You don't want to teach your kid, like, yeah, you need to vote for this candidate and this other candidate. They suck. Now, they're going to know what you think about politics and stuff like that. But what you should tell them is, listen, you need to figure this stuff out for yourself. And you might give them some advice. They start going off the deep end and you know, join the Youth for Communism or the Nazi Party or something. But you want to teach them what to think, or how to think, not what to think. And why? Because you want them to be smarter than you. Plain and simple. You want them to be smarter than you. You want to raise kids that are better adapted to the world than you are. You want to raise kids that are more successful, and I don't mean just financially successful, that are more successful than you are at life. So, and the third thing is, your kid ain't as cute as you think he or she is. If somebody else's kid does something and you go like, ugh, and then another time your kid does the same thing, don't reward that kid. Like I said, you held that precious little baby in the palm of your hand and looked at that face, and that face looked like you to a certain extent. And you have nothing but love for this child. But the rest of the world has to live with them. And if you think that they're cuter than they are or smarter than they are, then the rest of the world has to deal with your ill-behaved child. And you don't want that. You don't want that. So don't reward behavior that you wouldn't think deserves being rewarded to somebody else's kid. Somebody else's kid does it and it's cute, and your kid does it, it's cute. Like, hey, reward it. Oh, you're so cute, little Johnny. But and because they're going to rebel against you anyway. Or they should. I mean, that's just human nature. Some kids rebel aggressively and some passively. And but most kids rebel. One of the times that I see kids not rebel is where institutions get a hold of them and they rebel, but they rebel and do the things that their teachers think need to happen. Like, I had this coworker. The relationship was a little different than just a coworker, but I don't want anybody to figure out who she is. And very, very bright, much younger than me. She said that that there were busloads of people that were going up to demonstrate. And this woman just got out of college when I met her. And she said, yeah, we're going with some of the current students. We're going up to Tallahassee because they're trying to squeeze the teachers, and it had something to do maybe with the pension or tenure or something like that. And we were protesting. And I said, well, so what does this have to do with you? And she said, well, we have to support the teachers. We have to rebel against the establishment. I said, well, no. The establishment is getting you to rebel against another part of the establishment. So and sometimes you can steer your kids right towards that. Like don't let people play you. Rebel against your parents, because that's what kids do. They always do. And then the fourth thing, and I did a video about this. The video was called, I Grew Up When I Was 30, When Did You? I highly recommend that you rewatch that video, because I'm assuming that you're going to watch that one before you watch this one. It's very, very hard for you to raise kids if you have to grow up yourself. People say, oh, age is just a number. Well, I'm almost 71. I'll be 71 about a week from now. Age isn't just a number. I mean, it is a number, but for me, it's a big number. I'm 70 years older than you are, Olive. So, but whatever your number is, whether you're 1, and I know you haven't grown up, and 4, and Arlo, you've grown up a little more than Olive, but you have a long ways to go. If you look at my thing, you're 4/21 of the way to being a fully responsible adult, which is a little more than 1 out of 5. So you should be able to make 1 out of 5 decisions. Not that you're making those decisions or not making those decisions, but that you can make the correct decision. And that's what your parents do when they're letting you make decisions or they're telling you what to do. They're trying to get you into a position where you will make the right decision when you're on your own. So you should be 4/21 of the way there. Frank, you're there. Are you grown up? I don't know. I don't know if you ever watched that video. Maybe you should. So the 3 things that made me realize that I had just grown up when I was 30 was I realized that I had left my wife, Marcia, your grandmother, Arlo and Frank, and I was responsible for Frank and Tom. I had a lot of help, a lot of McConnells and a lot of Clarks, and people close to us. Your Uncle Richard, Aunt Linda, and then some of the aunts and uncles up there in Bristol and in Yardville or whatever that other town is that they live in. Helped. We never lacked for a place for Frank and Tom to lay their heads. But I realized I was the one that had to make all that stuff happen. Had to get them to Stone Harbor, to Bristol, to a babysitter out on the 17th, in the 17th district, and all that kind of stuff. And if I didn't do it, nobody else necessarily would. Now maybe they would have, but it was on me. Tag, you're it, and I was it. So that was the first thing. I was responsible. And the second thing was, like, I didn't even think that I was going to die. I mean, I guess I realized it, but it was just an idea, like, oh yeah, someday I guess I'm going to die. But when I had these 2 children, I said, well, I'm responsible for them. And I was a cop. I mean, I put my life on the line to a certain extent. When I went out on the street, I was walking down the street in a uniform with a gun. And if shots were fired, I was supposed to go towards the shots, not be one of the many people running away from the shots. So I thought, how much time do I have left? And then the third thing was, I stopped blaming others for me being me. You might have had the crappiest childhood in the world. You might have had the best childhood in the world. I remember blaming my parents. My parents were, I blamed them for not being strict enough. If you were stricter with me, I would have been more successful. It was BS. No matter where you came from, whether you came from the slums of Calcutta or the most exclusive neighborhood in the world, you are responsible for you. And when you realize those 3 things, then it'll make it easier for you to be a better parent. So the 4 things were, you probably know very little about raising children, no matter how much preparation you've done. Your kid ain't as smart as you think they are. Kid ain't as cute as you think they are, and they're definitely not as cute as they think they are. And then it's hard to help your kids grow up if you haven't grown up yourself. And you're still blaming others for what you are today. In closing, one of the most famous fathers ever was King David of Israel. And one time, King David was out. He was supposed to be out at the battlefield, but he wasn't. He was in the palace, and he looked across out of his window on another roof, and there was this naked lady named Bathsheba, and she was taking a bath. That's why they call her Bathsheba. Now, that just happens to be her name, but she was taking a bath, and he went, wow, I want her. He sent a couple of his guys over there, and they said, the king wants you. So she got dressed and went over there, and the king could do anything that he wanted to do, and she couldn't say no, so he had sex with her, and she had a baby. And so we tried to fool the husband. I can't remember his name right now. Crap, I didn't write that down. And he was out there at the battlefield, so we called him back and he said, hey, like, go home, take the night off and go home and enjoy life at home, sleep with your wife and all that kind of stuff. Because he knew she was already pregnant. And he was so faithful to David that he didn't do it. So David said to one of his generals, yeah, well, put this guy in this position. And he did it in the next battle. And he was killed, and he did that on purpose. He had this man killed because it's something that he did. And so one of his sons was named Absalom. And Absalom started going off the rails, started rebelling, like really rebelling, like armed rebellion against his dad. And because David had done such egregious things, he couldn't address what Absalom was doing until it was too late. And Absalom wound up being killed in a battle. And David wept. So think about what you're doing, not just in front of your children, but what you're doing that is going to influence your legacy that your children are going to get to look at. If you're a very good living person, then there's a better chance that your children aren't going to go off the rails, because there's this one, I guess he was a Bible teacher that used to say, no matter how much I try to teach my children how to behave, they continue to act just like me. And there's so much truth in that. So be an example. Be an example for your children. And I will say this about my kids and their spouses. And I don't know much about the Maiorini's, Frank, but so I'm talking about Tom and Lucy and Courtney and Salem. They're all very, very good examples for their children. And so you want to follow in that. I wasn't always the best example, but I actually tried to be. by the time you watch this, it'd be interesting if you ask your parents, like, because I'll be ancient history by then. Like, hey, did he even try? Did he even try? He didn't seem to be trying to be an example when I knew him as grandpa. But when he was dad, was he even trying? Tell me. And then in Ephesians 6:4, it says this: fathers. And fathers can mean parents. It's just the way this translation translated it. Do not provoke your children to anger, but raise them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So, as I said, this isn't an evangelistic talk right now, but you don't want to provoke your children to anger. I hate these, and it doesn't matter if you're left wing or right wing or whatever it is, these people who raise children to be these angry spokespeople. And there's people in Christianity that do this. I don't know in other religions if they do it. They'll have like some child preacher, some 10-year-old who's like standing there with the Bible going like, you're going to hell. And sorry I did that in a southern accent, but sometimes those children had a southern accent. And it never turns out well. There's a couple of comedians, one named Sam Kinison, and a guy, and he's dead now. He died in an automobile accident years ago. He was one. And then a guy that's current, his name's Theo Vaughn, and he was one. And they really have a lot of issues to work through. So, you know, there's people that'll call into some talk show and they put their kid on and they'll go, oh, this is 12-year-old Johnny from Des Moines, Iowa. And they'll start going like, I hate Joe Biden, he sucks so bad, and he's bad for the country, or I hate that Donald Trump. And that. Like, don't provoke your children to anger. It won't turn out well. Provoke them to joy. You don't have to teach them the ways of the Lord God, but teach them the right things. You know, so be the right example and teach the right example. You know, you can teach them. You can teach them principles. Make sure one of those principles is think for yourself. Look at things from different angles before you make up your mind. And things will go well for you. Hope that was helpful. And maybe if the Hindus are right and I come back a second time, if I remember all this stuff, maybe I'll be a better dad next time. But probably won't. It's just the world. It's the way of the world. Like I said before, welcome to the human race. Peace out.